questions until the end of the presentation, then we'll handle them there. So Ethan and Eugene.
So also to engage in a lot of the activities we're talking about with regards to civic technology has to be done online. We have a huge problem that a lot of people can't afford internet access. You're paying $50 to $100 a month to get internet access either through your home line or through your wireless carrier. It's just not affordable, so you're pretty much excluded from a lot of civic activities or political and economic activities. So we are building something, a local project called TOMesh to help solve that problem. And the reason, well, we have to ask, why is it unaffordable at the moment? It's because it's controlled by a few ISPs and corporate interests that control what's something called the last mile. So normally if you get an internet connection, you have to get pay for your subscription, you get a modem, your cable modem or DSL, and you can put that to your router, and that's kind of a localizable area, and you're paying $50 or $100 a month or so for that. But it's very limited. So on the mesh network, so we have a slide for the mesh. On the mesh network, there's something differently. Because instead of running sort of expensive cabling for fiber optics and via telephone or cable wiring, it's much better to sort of skip that aspect. Like some countries just sort of skip landlines and gone straight to cellular. We can do sort of a similar kind of idea, is running essentially one line in and sharing that internet connection across an entire community. And then people might pay somewhere on the orders of like $10 a month, say, or potentially free or subsidized. But the infrastructure cost is just orders of magnitude cheaper than the current system. You can deliver much cheaper internet access for everyone. And other advantages, of course, aside from affordability, is privacy. If you're other ways if you can't afford internet access, you go to a coffee shop normally, and then you'll probably have to give out some of your personal information, or you have to start buying coffees, which also becomes more expensive, and you're localized to your one little coffee shop, one region that's giving you internet access directly. On the mesh network side, because the whole community could be wired, like it might start with Kensington Market or some area, depends where we're able to deploy. If you're walking down the street, or if you're in a household, or if you're in a shop, you would still be able to connect. And again, you just pay like your small amount of internet fees per month. So that's kind of the goal, is because we think internet access should be a civic or a human right, and it's necessary for proper participation and engagement in sort of our modern economy and whatnot, and need to make it affordable. So we've been working on projects like in building this out, and I think Judith's going to, I got some other aspects. Resilient. Yeah, so also resilient. So on the current system, quite quickly, if your internet connection goes down, like your Rogers, your TechSat, your Bell goes down, you've lost internet connection to your entire household. On this other system, because of the way the mesh network is built, you can have a few nodes go down or a few pipes, and you can still have internet access. Sort of redundant, decentralized network systems. But we can talk about that in detail later. Also, with regards to the privacy, the entire network itself is encrypted. So not only does that help just for your personal information that goes across the network, it means that your personal files won't be accessible unless you make them accessible to other people. So it helps prevent sort of attackers. This is a big issue if you're at Starbucks, for instance. You run an unencrypted line, and as soon as you connect there, people can pretty much start siphoning off your data. If you want, it's very insecure, huge hacker issues there. Something to be very cautious of and try to prevent that. Right in building encryption right at the protocol level. So, it's also very important to easily deployable in rural areas. It's a lot of people in rural, especially northern areas, just can't get internet access. It's too expensive to lay the pipe or lay the fiber or cable out in those regions, so they just get underserved. In this case, these mesh networks are deployable quite cheaply in areas that just are currently underserved, won't be served because of the cost. So we can get internet access to everybody in Canada.
You might think that the biggest challenge to building mesh networks would be the technology or the cost, but it's actually neither of those. We've been working on the tech, and we have a reference node design based on a Raspberry Pi that we've been testing out. But yeah, the greatest challenge is actually bootstrapping a community, getting a whole community on board, and deploying the nodes all over the place so that there's enough of a density so that there is a mesh network set up. So the way we're doing that is two ways. We're trying to learn from other people who sort of work in this space. So some of our members are going down to Hope in New York in a couple of weeks from now, which is Hackers on Planet Earth. They're going to be meeting with other mesh communities in the world, and we're going to try to be learning from them. And the other thing we've been doing is engaging with the community here in Toronto. So at Maker Festival, we did a big push at Maker Festival. So we had a satellite event. where Ben, you wanna move past that? We had an interactive workshop where we kind of talked about where we can set up a mesh network and start a mesh network in the city. So Kensington Market was one of the contenders, and then we also try to get people from the community to understand how they would work. We used Yarn and sort of paper planned network and try to connect different communities to show how it might work. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting conversation there. And then the other thing we did was we built a game. We built a little board game, interactive game, to explain how mesh networks work. This is a couple of kids at Maker Festival playing the game. So we actually managed to engage with audiences which we haven't been able to engage with before, because some of this stuff might come across as too technical, but it really isn't and shouldn't be. So yeah, yeah, this is us building, prototyping, a lot of soldering. And this is me losing the game that I built. But yeah, we brought the game today. If anyone wants to come and try playing it, see how it works, and yeah. Toronto Mesh is one of the projects that's in tech. If anyone's interested in talking about it or learning more about what mesh networks are, come and chat with us.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to know, why is it so, can you tell us why is it so difficult to have such dense mesh networks? What do you find that, why is that so difficult? Because you didn't speak why it was actually difficult to create.
Oh, you need it. Okay, so the problem is that we're meshing over Wi-Fi because we want to eliminate cables because cables are pretty costly to set up. Like setting up line infrastructure is pretty expensive. So we want to kind of remove that obstacle. So Wi-Fi is a good alternative. The problem with Wi-Fi is that unless you use more expensive equipment and directional antennas, which go longer range, you're limited to omnidirectional home sort of routers, which have limited range. So for example, your home router that you use at home has a range of about less than 100 feet. So if you want router-to-router communication, you need two routers to be within 100 foot. So you definitely need that kind of density to be able to expand the network. Yeah.
You mentioned Raspberry Pi. Can you explain what that is?
So Raspberry Pi, if anyone doesn't know, is a single board computer, which is pretty cheap. The reason why we went for Raspberry Pis is because they're pretty easily accessible. They're very powerful for what they are, and they're super cheap. You can get a Raspberry Pi for
$55.
like the newer, the best version for under $60, and the cheapest version is actually $5. Raspberry Pi
It's a mini computer that you can use as a home desktop if you wanted to as well.
Yeah, it can run all your word processing, email, and everything. Yeah.
Hands up high if you have questions. Go ahead. I'll come to you next.
So, what are your next couple of steps in terms of you've got some working hardware, but then what are the steps between that and actually having a sort of functional network somewhere in the city?
So yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier was kind of just bootstrapping this community, right? So getting a few people in a neighborhood on board and then rolling it out. So getting them to leave their either
We need places to plug the computers and plug the nodes in.
and
So
then
you
just
need to find people find a density of people who want to host this?
exactly and build up from there. So Kensington Market is currently our best hope marketing.
Are you sure about that?
Why is that? We're not sure about it. We're open ideas, right?
Yeah, we open ideas.
Have you talked to the people in the VIA?
The
No.
Kensington VIA?
Because related to, I guess, Pedestrian Sunday, there's people who had to get that to work, and I think those might be good people to talk to.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
I have probably a stupid question, but do you still have to, how do you connect without, what's the original point of connection? Do you still have to connect them to the fiber optic somewhere? Like, how does that
Yes,
work?
you'll have to connect it to at least have one node that's connected.
So do you still rely on a Rogers or something like that for
Well,
that,
we're
or?
planning to kind of skip that step and go directly to the internet exchange providers.
There's a big one on Front Street, because they'll have to get their connections from a main provider as well. If they lease
Okay.
out, we can skip them and go there. Otherwise, like in your tech savvy or your Bell or Rogers agreement, you're not allowed to resell.
Right.
So we have to either have something arranged with them, because they don't allow you to resell precisely for trying to prevent people from doing this, because that would cut into their margins.
Right.
So,
And the other thing is that there's actually a little bit of debate in the group about that as well. Like, we're trying to decide if there's value of just having a local network without even
Yeah.
like backhaul internet connection, because we can have local services. There's still communication online, so people just having communication as a fundamental right that everyone should have is also valuable, right?
There are also use cases where you can use the mesh as a link to your home internet. So that you're connecting your phone to Wi-Fi and then like you're exiting to the internet with your phone.
So yeah, so if you're walking around and there's a Wi-Fi access point which is connected to the mesh network, and you're sharing your home connection with just yourself. So you have an encrypted link between your phone and your home internet. You can be walking around the streets of Toronto using your home internet which you already paid, right? Instead of relying on data or using Starbucks and it's fully encrypted. So there is value in just having a local network that doesn't have backhaul.
Okay, I saw hands. Can you stick them up again? I'm just gonna go from the back to the front. So yeah, you go ahead.
She asked my first part of the question, how do you get to the internet? So isn't that gonna generate a bottleneck somewhere? I'll put it this way, how do you do metrics? Which path I'm taking? It's a mesh, so if I'm requesting a path, how do you manage which hop I'm gonna take next? Am I taking the longest route or the shortest
So
route? Or?
there are a number of different, so that's a very complicated question. There are a number of different mesh algorithms that you can choose. We're choosing one specifically called CJDNS.
Mhm.
We can talk about that more if you want. The way that this one works is that it kind of keeps only like, each node keeps a partial view of its nearest neighbors.
So it
And
learns.
then each node kind of pushes the traffic closer and closer to the end destination
Mhm.
based on like address space. We can talk about it later if you want.
Second part of the question.
Hang on a second. Let's see. Does anybody else have questions before you go to part two? Go ahead. I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
How successful has the New York City node mesh, been, if that's the model you're using?
Ben, you want to?
Yeah, so these are called mesh locals. The most successful ones that I know of are actually in Berlin and Barcelona. They have more than like 30,000 nodes. A lot of people still have the home ISP contract, but instead of just using it for themselves, they also share that. So that when one block goes down, the other people can go online through someone else. They also have the capability of sharing access to communities that are underserved just by like beaming directional Wi-Fi to them. In New York, I would say they're like a year-ish ahead of us. They have maybe 40, 50 nodes, but they're very much in the beginning phase. They are starting to look into backhaul through the internet exchange points, but they do have like a bunch of areas routed up long distance. That they're thinking about how do you make sure that within a block you have good coverage.
Okay, we got a couple more minutes for questions. Is anybody? I know you've got one. I'll come back to you as long as nobody else who hasn't asked one yet doesn't have one.
As long as I remember.
Voices of gods to the right. Any questions? All people. Any questions? Okay, floor is yours, guys.
Sorry. Encryption. Who owns it? You said security a couple of times. If you elaborate on that, because you're creating a pipe somewhere and you throw me all over. I'm not being negative here. I'm just being cautious.
Sure.
Instead of one-to-one connection between me and Rogers, who actually recording everything anyway.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to multiple places.
Ben, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, so the CJDNS is a protocol that forms an encrypted mesh network. The first thing that it addresses is the router, which you also asked, like which hop it goes through. Finding efficient routes is one of the things that CJDNS is actively working on. The other thing is by default end-to-end encryption on everything. The IP address that that you have is generated off of cryptographic keys, so that everything that you send to another node, the address is basically like a fingerprint of the keys. So you know exactly who you're talking to, and all the intermediate nodes cannot see the content.
Okay, which end of the line hold the keys? Am I own? I own my own keys on my router?
Keys. It's
Okay.
public-private key cryptography. So
Yeah, so-
there's a public key and there's you own your private key.
That's a concern. So public is okay, but the private key, if it's with someone else, it's already open.
You don't send your private key over there.
The private keys are always contained client side.
Okay,
It's,
thank
no
you.
one manages key.
And the
It's-
public
it's
key is just
peer-to-peer.
for, yeah, we can talk about public keys.
Yes, please.
After this as well.
Next.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? You got one?
Just-
Oh, okay, I see.
One question.
Okay,
Uh,
2 minutes, right? So this is it. So you guys go fast.
Where,
So not weighing in, just
Go ahead,
questions,
go ahead.
right? Go for it.
Please.
no, I just want to know where can I get that gift of the cat that's on?
Slides will be on GitHub tonight.
Oh.
Okay, good, and finally.
And, is there any existing system that the public has contributed to create something big, so that you can learn from what motivates people to adapt and you have the hotspots? Is there any system that you
Like
understand?
any model of something similar but not for internet?
Yeah.
I've been watching.
What is it?
Watching.
Blockchain?
No, I was going. I was thinking couchsurfing maybe or something.
Right.
Yeah, whenever an issue can really come to head, like for example, like one of the best examples of mesh networks I can think of is like during the student protests in Hong Kong, they used this application called FireChat, which is a Bluetooth mesh network. So although the cellular networks were down, students were still talking to each other over Bluetooth. And they didn't rely on any centralized infrastructure because the packets were just being routed through their peers and people nearby, so.
Cool.
Small tiny
Is it
question.
this small?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
since you mentioned in Hong Kong using cell phones, instead of the Raspberry Pi, could you use refurbished cell phones as the Wi-Fi repeater, so to speak?
There are technical challenges to that.
Okay.
So we use a specific,
Can I do it? No? You can't use cell phones? No, you
Okay.
can't use cell phones. Okay, so I see some new faces in the room. If you didn't introduce yourself, can you stick your hand up? Because I saw some people kind of wander in. Okay, so we're gonna do just one kind of bonus round of intros from the back. So hands up again, just so I can see. Okay, from the back, just your name and why you're here.
Sam Bruno.